Hey, Politipop heads, happy Friday, and this is Mike Booch coming in to let you know that we have a content warning for the beginning of this episode. We review or discuss a comic book that Ty is getting into, but the author has a bit of a complicated history, especially with that character. There's talk of sexual assault happening to a comic book character, so you can just fast forward past the theme song if that is something you would prefer to skip. Thanks for listening and have a great weekend. Yeah, it always blows my mind that the people who are like, you're all sheeple and you're all followers and, you know, you'll believe anything. Like, these are the people that will, you know, get their icon and his trademark terrible toupee put on every single thing that they can. Like,
yeah, I'm just like, do you really want to drive around with a Trump USA sticker? Like, that's, I don't know. He lost.
I mean,
first
it was
of all,
a truck,
so.
right? Let me look at this.
It was a truck. Yeah, it was a douchebag truck.
There's nothing like telling everybody what your opinions are when you have a pickup truck, man.
It's just interesting that people like that, they're the ones that always have like a shit ton of stickers that'll be like, fuck your feelings, and like, my gun's gonna fuck your mom, and like, you know, Trump's God, like shit like that. And you're just like, why do you need this shit?
It's fuck your feelings, and yet all of your feelings are all over your truck.
Yeah.
But that's the problem, man. That's because men in society, toxic men, are raised to not express any sort of feelings except like anger. That's it. Yeah.
And you have all, you know, obviously like all these QAnon people and stuff. And did you hear there's a microchip shortage for like phones and stuff right now?
Yeah, they're in all of our vaccines. Bro.
Yeah, which is like hilarious timing. And then there's like the recall on the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Oh, so I feel like everyone's gonna be like, holy fuck, I told you, this is it.
Oh my God!
Good times.
It's hilarious. Tell me. I mean, all I can do is laugh now. Tell me about Gotham Knights.
Yeah, I gotta tell you about this comic. So
I want to know.
I've been wanting to read more Dick Grayson. I know, surprising. Never really read any of his comics before, but I was reading about like some of the '90s stuff, like Nightfall and Prodigal Son, and I started like getting into like early 2000s stuff, and like I don't know, just like looking up like what comics he appeared in, and you know, stuff that I might have missed maybe. And I heard about this series called Gotham Knights from, I think, the year 2000. And basically its goal was to focus on the Bat family more and their relationships to Bruce Wayne. And it's actually the comic where Dick Grayson gets officially adopted. It was also the first ongoing Batman series written by a woman. So people seemed to really enjoy it. It had good reviews. Wow. Yeah, right? A lot of cool stuff. So it turned out they had printed them into trade paperback form, 2 different volumes, like maybe 3 years ago or so. So they're not that hard to find, not that expensive. So I was like, let me pick up the first volume, got it for like $20. And it hasn't quite arrived yet, but I was like, I'm really excited for it. So I decided to kind of like research the writer a little bit more. I'm like, yeah, like who is this woman that's like the first writer, you know, female writer of an ongoing Batman series, right?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Right. So her name is Devin Grayson. All right, which is kind of cool, you know, Dick Grayson.
Okay.
And I did a little research on her, and it turned out that she had never been into comic books until Batman the Animated Series. And she watched it, and she thought it was incredible. She loved the idea of Batman, like, raising a son, you know, with Dick Grayson. So she started to, like, read a bunch of comics. I believe she's also gay, so her and her, like, her partner at the time, I don't know if they're still together or not, but they decided to, like, just, like, delve into the animated series together and, like, find a bunch of comic books, and she wound up becoming, like, a huge Dick Grayson fan. She, like, loved him. She thought he was, like, the one of the most, like, well-written characters like in comic books, and just love the idea of him being raised by Batman, and like thinking about like all the stuff that you would like get in trouble for as a teenager, and then imagining like Batman's the one yelling at you for it. So like it was kind of cool. So she like actually like contacted the editor of DC at the time, like in '97, and convinced him to let her write like a miniseries basically that they like printed, and they did. And then she wound up getting more and more gigs from DC until she wrote Gotham Knights in 2000. And then I think around like 2003, 2004, she actually took over writing Nightwing from Chuck Dixon, who was a very big Nightwing writer. He's known for doing some really good stories with him.
Yeah, I've read a lot of his stuff.
Yeah, so like I was like, oh, this is really cool. Right. I'm like, this is really interesting, you know, and her characterization of Dick is really good. Like, she really understands his character. But so I'm reading about her, and I keep running into these posts talking about how horrible her Nightwing run is and how people hate her. And I'm like, how, right? Like, people love Gotham Knight. She loves Nightwing. Like, she understands his character. Like, I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense. So, like, I start reading, like, I went into, like, all these old, like, Tumblr posts people made about it. Like, I really went, like, deep into this. And apparently, like, her run was really controversial and problematic. So and I actually didn't realize, I actually read some of her comics back in high school. I have a few of them. Like, they were random ones, like this one called Renegade, where he, like, joins Deathstroke and stuff. Just, like, random stories. Well, she's the one that actually wrote where Nightwing lets Tarantula murder Blockbuster.
I knew it. I knew you were going to fucking say this. And then shortly after, Nightwing gets sexually assaulted by her?
Yeah, he gets raped while he's having a panic attack by Tarantula.
Oh, God.
So, and this is where it gets really fucked up, right? Like, it's already bad enough, but in an interview at the time, she said she wouldn't call it rape. She would call it non-consensual sex. Oh, which is just like, oh my God. Like,
that's just rape with extra steps.
I know. I'm just like, well, okay. Apparently in 2014, she apologized for not calling a spade there. But apparently she didn't feel that was what it was at the time. So she also wrote, now again, I haven't read this firsthand, but I know of it, and I've read enough posts from people to see that this is what she did. She also alluded to Dick having sexual feelings for Bruce when he was a teenager, and that he made a move on him, which really destroyed their relationship, and that's part of the reason why they were so strained later on, which is fucking so weird.
I would totally be down to delve into that too. Like,
I know. I'm just like, what?
Being Bruce being like, "What is this? Get off of me!" Blah blah blah, and Dick was like, "Oh, like, I don't know. I'm just finding myself out." And because Batman has never explored anything, he'd approach it more as like, "Whoa, that's gross, bro." Instead of being like, "All right, kid, let's talk this out."
Well, supposedly that's kind of like what she was writing, is like, oh, he was like confused. He wasn't sure, like, because again, Bruce Wayne's not his actual father, right? But like, it is a little weird since he kind of raises him. Though I guess you could argue Alfred really raises him. But she also wrote Nightwing as having no control over his body, that his body would just act on its own, and that was her excuse for why he was so womanizing throughout her run.
Okay. This is starting to take a turn.
And she also used some derogatory words. Yeah, she also used some derogatory words towards the Roma people, which Dick Grayson kind of, has a background in sometimes. And,
because he was with Haley's traveling circus.
Right. And she apparently was pretty problematic about that as well. Oh, boy. So
Grant Morrison get over that, and she couldn't navigate it. That blows my mind.
I know, right? I'm just like, wow. So she is known for having this horrible Nightwing run, and apparently right after he's like raped, it basically like ends like a couple of issues later, that story, and never really goes anywhere with it. And then she does a bunch of random shit. And then eventually he tells Bruce and Babs and moves on from it, and that was her run. So she's forever known as having raped Nightwing, and that kind of left her in a terrible spot. So that's Devin Grayson, who has actually written some really, like I said, some really good stuff. I think she won a GLAAD award for a comic or a short story where I think it's like a woman playing a man in an online like RPG, and apparently it's great, So she's a talented writer, but she took some really, really wrong turns with this Nightwing run and left a really bad taste in people's mouths.
And I wonder what the difference is. I mean, I'd have to read it, obviously.
Yeah.
We haven't read it yet, but like, Batman was date raped by Talia al Ghul,
right.
And that resulted in one of my favorite characters, Damian Wayne, later on. Now, I don't know her as a person. If I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, I would say, like, maybe it's just that she came into this industry with an internalized misogyny. Like,
Right.
this is the way these stories are told when it's women in these positions, which is also terrible and and sloppy a lot of the time. But like, there, you know, when done the right way, there's a real story to tell there about Nightwing. And
I think that's the thing is, like, you know, men can be raped, right? I think there's like this common misconception that men can't be, you know, sexually assaulted, but that's totally not true. Obviously, you know, I think the statistics would show it's not as common, but it definitely happens. And she could have told a really nuanced story here. But I think the fact that she was so against, like, embracing the fact that that's what happened probably hurt the story.
And once again, this isn't me defending her because I don't know her or her work, but like, you know, there's, you know, when you go back, let's say 10 years ago, your idea of what assault was might have been just based on Law and Order SVU. And now, like, you know, you've taken a few classes, you've seen a few, you know, documentaries, you've learned a few things, and you know, like, all right, like, assault is actually much more nuanced than what I've been seeing in popular media. So maybe she didn't even have the language to be like, yeah, that's what this is.
Yeah, and people change too, right? Like, people, you know, maybe in 2014 she did look back and go, wow, that was kind of fucked up. I should have really been like, yeah, you know, he was raped. And, you know, that I think, you know, that she could have really had a change of heart or you know, further educated herself or realized that she, you know, she didn't really do it do it justice or do it the right way for, you know, people who have actually been sexually assaulted. And, you know, so again, people change, and I don't think, you know, she should be like permanently canceled for the run, but it was interesting to me to see, you know, how she started so hot, kind of like in the industry, people loving her work, and then you know, she kind of ended her run with DC Comics on such a sour note, especially with a character that she, you know, she seemed to really identify with. She seemed to really love. You know, apparently she's a huge Dick Grayson fan. I think probably writing Nightwing was probably a dream come true for her, right? I mean, it would be for me. And and to kind of just butcher it like that must have been, I'm sure it was crushing to her too, you know, like to see how fans just despise that run. But, you know,
because there's definitely a way, like, I don't want to get too into this, but now I'm thinking about it. Like, you know, all of the Bat family is kind of steeped in this trauma. And, you know, unfortunately for them, it's all like worse than what happened to Bruce Wayne when he was a kid.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so Batgirl, you know, she was assaulted and paralyzed by the Joker, and Jason Todd was literally beaten to death by the Joker and left alone to die. And, you know, to have Nightwing go through something similar, but as an adult, and you know, have to reconcile with the fact that, like, I was raised by, you know, the deadliest and most powerful, you know, martial artist in the world, arguably, and yet this thing happened to me. How can it also happen to me? Am I still a hero? Like, I mean, they kind of went over that in Invincible, I think, and they did it much better. You know, but Kirkman obviously has the hindsight, and you know, at the time that stuff was still very new for someone like Grayson, I think. And
I mean, it's a cool concept that she had, like, that he would be paralyzed from, like, letting her murder Blockbuster, because he was raised to always, you know, not never kill, right? That Bruce Wayne has that code as Batman, you know, kill, and Nightwing follows that. But to let, you know, a villain be murdered, you know, he has that panic attack. I like that direction. But then for him to be, you know, assaulted right afterwards was kind of like, whoa, okay, quite the turn. And you know, just the way I think it's the aftermath of how she supposedly dealt with it that was kind of, you know,
Yeah, because if she never said anything, like, you know, because it's happened to so many women characters in comic books, and the writers, you know, I don't remember any of them ever, you know, being confronted and being like, that's not actually what it was.
Yeah.
They're like, no, the villain did this, that's the bad guy. You know, a lot of times it's a lazy writing trope.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But, like, to not even, like, be like, oh, well, you know, it wasn't really that. But, you know, she also wrote him being really depressed for a while after that. So I think deep down she knew, right, that it was wrong, and that, you know, it was against his will. So I don't know why she wouldn't just call it out. But again, I haven't read this complete run. Maybe somebody listening has, and they're like, fuck you, it's the best run of Nightwing ever. And I'm going to call you out on your shit. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious if they had it collected in like trade paperback form, I would totally read it. But they don't have her on there, so I'm going to start with Gotham Knights, which I heard is great because she really delves into the family, and I think that's a great aspect of her writing, that she's like kind of the first one to really focus on them to that degree. And I thought that was kind of cool, but then I read some more stuff and I was like, oh.
Well, she could always be J.K. Rowling, guys. Ty,
right.
do you think that we have any new reviews this week or no?
Oh, you tricked me last week, my friend. So I'm going to change my answer to -1.
Yes, that's accurate. We actually owe a review to another podcast because we have gotten none this week.
Maybe Devin Grayson has one. We can review her podcast.
Imagine. Never mind. I'm not going there. But my hacky stand-up comedy gene is still in there. So
yeah.
But yeah, that is correct. We haven't gotten a new review this week. But if you are one of the folks out there who wants to get your review read at the top of the podcast, all you have to do is go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and rate and review. Subscribe so that way you can get the episode every week and never miss it. We're currently releasing 2 episodes every week for those of you who haven't been, I guess, following the feed, or if this is your first episode you've ever listened to. Ty and I are doing Falcon and the Winter Soldier mini reviews completely separate from each other. So I have my feelings on it. He has his. We say them. We release them in a nice compact episode. And then argue about shit on the internet with complete strangers for the week and bring that into the next episode.
Yeah.
However, I want to call it now. I think we review the series together
for the
last week of April.
Okay.
Yeah, because this week we have the 5th episode, and the next week we'll have the 6th. So for next week we can do a housekeeping.
Yeah.
There's plenty going on. There's plenty of houses that need to be kept, that need some keeping. And then the 30th will be the week after the finale of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so we can, do the final episode together and just kind of review the episode as a whole, because I didn't think it was going to be this relevant, and yet here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are with a bunch of people using their phones to film someone breaking the rules.
I've never seen Marvel be so daring and yet so not daring at the same time.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
Yeah. Really, it's kind of like the whole this could be anybody.
Yeah.
Everybody's a bad guy. Everyone's a gray area. But we'll go over that then. With that being said, let's get into the episode. Ty, you ready to bring in that theme song?
Bring it on in. With the theme song music and Booch.
Welcome back to the Politipop podcast, the podcast where we read between the lines of our favorite pop culture media and discuss the social and political themes within. I am your host, Mike Booch, a.k.a. the Soy Boy Pseudo-Intellectual, and in my guest seat today is somebody you may be familiar with. That's right, he is a filmmaker, grocery specialist, and now for the past year he has been a podcaster. You may remember him from our Spider-Man Homecoming episode. Please, wherever you are, put your hands together for the one, the only Ty.
Hey, I'm a little nervous, but excited to be here. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much for making the time to come on the podcast, Ty. We certainly have a lot to talk about in this episode, which is your year in review. And for those of you who are looking to find us on the internet, you can simply look up the Politipop podcast. You can go to Twitter and find us at Politipop Pod. You can find us on Instagram at Politipop Podcast, or you can email us at politipopcast@gmail.com. And as always, you can find our show notes and sources at politipoppodcast.wordpress.com. But now that we're past that, let's get into the episode. Ty, the first time you were ever on a podcast, I believe, was in our Spider-Man Homecoming episode, which was more of a movie review than it was a deep dive on social issues and political themes. What do you recall about that episode? How did you feel being on it?
I remember being incredibly nervous, ill-prepared, Not because I don't know Spider-Man, because I think I was just ready to review a movie and didn't really understand the point of the podcast so much. And at the time, I don't think I was...
Neither did I.
Yeah, I don't think at the time I was as, I guess, educated or aware of social and political themes, and just issues in the real world. I was kind of disconnected and just starting to kind of understand these things. So, yeah, I had fun being on it. I love talking about Spider-Man, but I definitely don't think I was quite where I am, today.
I think if we reviewed it again, we might see Vulture as a working class hero.
I would agree. Yeah.
Which it didn't occur to me until I was talking to a friend recently, and I was like, oh, I guess you're right. Like, he was doing all the weapons and stuff that all the other organizations were doing, but he was just doing it for himself and taking care of his guys and, and stealing from the people who were mass producing them and using them for war. So I was like, huh, what do you know? And he hated Tony Stark. Like, he, hated those capitalist douchebags. So,
true. Yeah.
Wow. But yeah, since then, we didn't really have a podcast. I think that Spider-Man Homecoming was episode 7. And shortly after that, we reviewed Get Out with Josh. We did Action Comics, The Oz Effect with guest Tom. And then we reviewed The Psychology of Batman, which was Antonia Chava's first episode. She does the logo design for our current logo. Although every time I see this red, white, and blue, I do throw up a little bit in my mouth. So either I change
it's
it to
ironic.
the Soviet version, yeah, or we work on something else that's a little more relevant to what the show has become.
True.
But yeah,
no, I was not on those episodes you mentioned, by the way. That was right. I was just a guest on Spider-Man, and then I went on my way, and you continued your podcast, and all the things you do.
And yes, and then I discontinued the podcast as well. It wouldn't be until 2020 happened, shortly after a little something you might have heard of called the COVID-19 pandemic. And
I've heard of it.
Yeah, maybe it's crossed your timeline here or there. But this was when you reached out to me about starting the Politipop podcast up again. Now, I have to ask you, somebody with your background, with your bona fides, you're the belle of the ball. Okay, you could pick any podcast you want. Why come to the Politipop podcast, Ty?
I'd heard a few of your episodes, and I just felt you really had something to bring to the table. No, you're my best friend, right? So I was like, hey, this is someone that I would really like to talk about this stuff with. I knew you had done the podcast, and I was like, you started this to kind of, if I recall correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you kind of did it to combat like Trump and Trumpism and Republicans and conservatives, and trying to push this liberal fight, right, to take it to those people and kind of educate them on some of the things that you wanted to talk about. But I felt that so much had happened within the last few years, and I was really, really, really in touch with politics for probably the first time in my life. I think I voted in the past, but never really been like that involved in it. And I really got caught up in the Bernie Sanders campaign, especially the second time. And I was really starting to kind of move towards a socialist mindset. And I just thought there was some really, really great stuff that could be discussed. And I was like, hey, we're in the middle of a pandemic. There's not a lot to do in the world, but there's a lot to talk about.
I had the time because I had, for lack of a better term, I had just gotten laid off of my job because of the pandemic. So, I was home.
Yeah, it's you're stuck at home. There's really nothing to do. I was working, but at the same time, after work, there's nowhere to go. You just go home. So I was like, hey, why don't you bring this back and, try to discuss some of these themes? And, I think we originally planned it as just kind of a trilogy, right? We were going to do a social class, social structure discussion, through 3 films that we're going to review. And, I was really excited about it. I just was like, oh, there's a lot I want to discuss, that I want to get my, message across. And I feel like this is a great way to do it. And I thought, you'd be really interested in doing that with me.
Well, you guessed right. And, I will say what surprised me about it is that we've been consistent with it every week for the past year. And that has blown my mind. Like, even just, making time to record at ungodly hours
Yeah.
or editing at ungodly hours.
Yep.
I'm the type of person that I'll get very invested in something for a short while and then kind of fall off of it. And that's what originally did happen with the podcast. It's not far off from what you said. I guess I was more, this was the first time I had been really aware of politics, was the 2016 election. And, I'd kind of been aware of social issues, but this was the first time I was like, wow, I don't like this president. And but a lot of people did, and some people within my own social circle. So I was more like, you know what, let's get to know everything. We got to just talk. We got to have a dialogue. But I only really had the tools that a liberal would have, which are talking points from mainstream media, CNN, stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of what it was. And it was like, all right, how can we find Trump in everything? And, some of the podcast was also that even after you came on. But yeah, Parasite happened, and I remember, just I listened back to this episode, and we were a lot more on top of it than I thought we were. Like, we actually might have become over prepared for this one.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, like you said, you were probably a little more nervous, so yeah, you definitely, came ready to play. Do you remember anything about the Parasite episode or any of the first episodes? We did Parasite, Platform, and Snowpiercer back to back to back.
I think I remember them more vividly than a lot of the ones we've done. Probably in the middle, obviously not the most recent ones,
right?
But
it's so weird, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I feel like because they were the first couple, and I don't think we really had a good format set up yet, right? We were kind of just figuring it out and how we were going to do it. And I think the way we approached it originally was we went through like story beat by story beat and then discussed, what kind of social themes we saw in there and relating it to current events. And I remember with Parasite, I was really nervous, obviously, as being the first one that I was going to be on. And I remember that we didn't actually use the characters' names, which was kind of embarrassing.
The rich dad, the poor dad, the rich mom, the poor mom.
I really regret doing that, but it happened, and I think we definitely understood the story and what the movie was trying to say very well. And like you said, I think
it was a bit of a disservice, though. You're right.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, we were a little over-prepared. I remember I had a ton of notes, and I think we discussed, like, so much. I don't remember how long the episode was, but I think it was, like, 2 hours.
1 hour, 56 minutes. Good job. Yeah, so it was 2 hours, and yeah, like, just looking back at the show notes, like, I have, like, notes about every single thing that I saw. Oh, and their names were Kevin and Jessica. They totally gave us like easy names.
I know. It was just like, man, I don't know. I guess I was nervous of like forgetting their names, and I was so afraid to kind of like. I mean, I use my phone all the time now with notes and IMDb and stuff when we talk, but I think at the time I was so afraid to try and do that, so I didn't. But I remember I really enjoyed the discussion and kind of picking that film apart, and I really enjoyed watching it. And then we watched The Platform, which you recommended, and I didn't know much about it, but I also really loved that film, and I thought it was really interesting. And it was very on the nose, that one, I think. We didn't have to so much like delve in between the lines and just kind of like talk about it. And then Snowpiercer is just one of my favorite films. It's just top 20 for me, probably. It's really good. I think the story's incredible. Some great performances. And I was really excited to talk about that. And I know we went story beat by story beat through that film. But I just really like talking about it. And at the time I was in a different place, I think, mentally. I think it wasn't like the pandemic had just started, but it wasn't like as bad as we realized it was going to get, I think. So I was like kind of nervous and apprehensive about the world, but I wasn't quite as defeated as I would be later on. And I also was really excited about the Bernie Sanders campaign.
Yeah, there was hope.
And then, as through the course of that, obviously things didn't turn out the way I hoped they would. So it was a different energy I think I was bringing at the time with me.
What's interesting is the platform episode. We specifically note that who's the guy? Minagasi, the one dude in it. I don't remember his name.
Yeah,
but,
I can't remember.
Trimagasi. But he he says like, oh, you think everybody should should have equal? What are you, a communist? And I remember on the podcast being like, not giving people rights is not communism, guys. Blah blah blah. It doesn't have to be like that. And that's when I thought it was a dirty word.
Right.
And that's still coming out of that liberal mindset. And now I'll throw the word around all the time. Communism. Yes, I believe in communism. I believe in the working class, having access to the means of production, having access to everything that they produce, and everybody getting a living wage. And instead of the government, giving us stuff, we are in control of everything, and we all have basic, amenities, and don't have to, work to survive, but we work to contribute to the community. And I can obviously. That just came off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So I can throw that out there a lot easier now than I could have back then when I was like.
You have to break that brainwashing, right? That we're
yes.
kind of, you're indoctrinated basically in this country to believe that communism and socialism are just these really horrible things that just cost people their lives and ruin your rights and just basically just terrible things. I mean, I think. To be honest, I thought of communism as just about equal to fascism when I was younger. I really didn't see much of a difference.
What we've been told. But also, I don't think it would be as bad if we also got the same readout of capitalism, right?
Yeah.
We get told that capitalism is perfect and these other things are so bad. And it's like, listen, there is, there are faults in every ideology, but, you can't, put down one and prop up capitalism as the best thing ever because it has a lot of ways in which it can be fixed. And, there are plenty of countries that, that work between the two and find a way to make things work. But,
but we never even try, right? We don't try. Yeah, we don't try to change anything ever.
Because we're afraid of the word. As a country, they're afraid of the word. They're afraid of the word socialism, which is just a bridge, to communism.
I know people are terrified of socialists, right?
They are. Now, I also want to talk about our housekeeping episodes because our first housekeeping episode was in June of 2020. It was June 5th, our boy's birthday. But yeah, so this was one episode was an hour, and the other episode was an hour as well. So that was 2 hours of just us talking current events, and yeah, these housekeeping episodes came about because we would take 30 minutes at the beginning of an episode talking just about what was going on in the world because it wasn't cathartic enough for us to just be like, this is a movie, these are the themes, this is how it's relevant to our world now or our world then or our world in the future. It got to the point where it's like, we gotta fucking talk about this shit, where the election was going and with, Black Lives Matter, ramping up again last summer. So, eventually we released our first housekeeping episode, and yeah, it was a Black Lives Matter episode, June 5th. We are now less than 2 months away from June, and we were. Yeah, I think this was George Floyd and everything, and
yeah, I mean there was a lot of energy there, right? I think we were caught up in the movement and excited and scared and frustrated and all the emotions I think that people were feeling at the time. And, obviously we were in the midst of a pandemic too. So there was limits to things that we could do. And I feel like we weren't sure if anyone was actually listening, but I know I personally wanted to talk about this stuff. I wanted to air it, be very open about it, hopefully educate somebody. I was trying to educate my own family at the time about it, and it was really helpful for me to kind of discuss these things very honestly and openly, and get it out there. And I think we needed some time to do that.
Yeah, and it's also nice to just be able to have, say your words and work through them, here, and then be able to say them a lot more coherently when you have to debate with people or what have you. But yeah, so we ended up doing our housekeeping episodes. I think I was trying to do one housekeeping a week and one episode a week. And
Yeah.
it was definitely a lot. Wow, remember Dijon Kizzy? That was another housekeeping episode. Kyle Rittenhouse happened.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
That sure did.
Jonathan Pryce. That was another one as well. Oh, wow. This is wild. Just looking back on it.
And it's only been a year.
No,
it's only been a year, right?
It really is. Yeah, and we didn't know what we were in for. Without going through every single episode that we did record, what were off the top of your head, and obviously you could take time for this, but what were some of your favorite episodes to record? What do you recall being like, turning off the mic and being like, wow, like that felt good?
Wow, we reviewed a lot of cool shit. I really enjoyed doing. I really enjoyed Snowpiercer. That being one of the first ones we worked on. I also really liked doing. I think the Purge film was a fun one. I like the Halloween stuff we did, like all the October things. I just enjoy those kind of films a lot. It's like my favorite time of year, so I was really into like Dawn of the Dead and talking about those. That was pretty great. Rogue One was cool. I really enjoyed discussing that. I think that was a film I was just really pumped for to talk about, because when I originally saw it, I did not really pick up all of the messages in that film. I was just like, fuck yeah, that was a cool Star Wars movie. And then, thinking back on it, I was like, wow, there was a lot there. So rewatching it and discussing it was really nice. And I really enjoyed our Black History Month. I thought was great. Spider-Man to the Spider-Verse. I've had a lot of fun with all of these, and even our Punk Rock Jesus, one of our most recent ones, I really was excited to talk about that. I mean, I just, it's good for me. I feel like it's helped me really, discover more about myself and gain a little more confidence. So it's in general, I've just really enjoyed doing these. And, there's a couple episodes that I didn't necessarily love or wasn't super excited for going into. But I think they all turned out okay.
Well, that was my next question, and I'm going to make a prediction. Which episodes? I know you probably have one or two off the top of your head. Which episodes were you like, oh god, like you either dreaded going into it because you weren't prepared, or because you didn't want to watch whatever we were reviewing? Because I'm sure there were a couple of those. I definitely know one of them.
There's three in particular. So if you want,
yes, you have them.
If you want to guess, go ahead, guess.
Okay, I'm gonna guess. All right, one of them was Yellowstone, definitely.
Oh, I forgot about that one, but most assuredly.
Yeah, there's Yellowstone. If it's after you watch the movie, Idiocracy.
Oh god, I was not looking forward to that at all after I saw that movie.
Ooh, maybe We Are What We Are with our boy Wyatt Russell, John Walker. Remember he was in that?
Was he the cop that gets killed?
He was the cop that gets killed.
Oh man,
We Are What We Are.
I know, I was cool with that one. That was fine.
Man, so let me see. Maybe Batman Returns.
Oh, definitely. I hated that movie.
Oh yes. Okay. So all right. What were they? If Yellowstone wasn't one of them?
It was Batman Returns. It was Idiocracy, and this is going to be kind of shocking to you, but The Lord of the Rings.
I can see that. Can I guess why?
Yeah, good.
Was it just like too much? Like you can't do it justice. It's your favorite thing, or was it another reason?
No, it was definitely another. I think I was just really uncomfortable with the subject matter.
We got very real and very raw on that. Well, two of us fucking did, it turns out. Very real and very raw on that podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it was weird. I was talking about things about my dad and my brother that I haven't talked about with a lot of people, never mind recording it and putting it online. And, I'd never spoken to Frankie before, and here I am trying to, have this very honest conversation with someone I just met. And I just love those fucking movies, right? So, talking about...
There's a lot going into that. I could totally see it.
And I think it was a good topic, but I think I even told you, it wasn't really the first thing that came to my mind when I saw those films or read those books. So,
That's right. I remember that.
I needed you to kind of...
What are we talking about?
Yeah, and so, it was kind of difficult for me to even kind of get into that originally. And I just really like talking about those films. And I think in that episode of probably all the episodes we've done, we spoke about the plot the least. We almost barely touched on the plot in that. In that
might
movie.
have been like our like moment, or that was the start of it. I think that was our moment where we were like, wait, we can like just discuss like the characters.
Yeah,
and,
it definitely set us up for further episodes. But so I think I would have enjoyed talking a little bit more about the plot, even more in depth about those characters. But yeah, it was an uncomfortable experience, but I wouldn't say it was a bad one. It just was something that I wasn't necessarily looking forward to.
No, I definitely understand that, because, I mean, there are moments when I listen back to myself on this podcast and I was talking about something that I definitely wasn't comfortable. I think even on the Punk Rock Jesus podcast, I was kind of walking on eggshells trying not to sound like too much of a fucking asshole. But, but that just because things are uncomfortable doesn't mean that we don't grow through them. And, I couldn't even tell, maybe if I listen back to the episodes, like maybe, but you really seem to share a lot for somebody who was just like, okay, I'm gonna, this is in depth. We read between the lines of ourselves.
Yeah, we did. I think once I got going, it was easy, but I think thinking about it beforehand was a little uncomfortable.
Another question, Ty. What's something that you wouldn't have watched otherwise if not for this podcast?
Oh, that's a good question.
Or maybe something you wouldn't have read otherwise. Because I know I read the Mad Max Fury Road comic book. I never would have read that shit if we weren't reviewing it for the podcast.
I probably wouldn't have watched Fast Color just because I didn't know about it. Not because it didn't sound interesting.
That's why a lot of people didn't watch it.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that. I probably wouldn't have watched. Well, Idiocracy was on my list, but I put it off for a long time. So, eventually I got to it. But, Yellowstone, I definitely would have never watched, ever. It just didn't sound like something that I would have been into.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's probably it. I think everything else I was pretty either interested in or was easy to get interested in. We
Are What We Are, I never would have watched.
It was actually a movie I had wanted to see. I'd seen the poster for it a few times. I thought it looked cool. I knew nothing about the plot, but I was kind of interested. Mr. Miracle, I think I would have eventually watched, but you're obviously the one that got me to finally read it because you lent it to me.
Yeah, I was like, dude, we gotta do this. And that's so funny, dude. Like, if I listen back to that episode, I was probably like, yeah, like, things have been a little tough emotionally. And now I can look back and be like, oh, my sweet summer child.
Oh, man.
You had no idea.
I forgot we did V for Vendetta and Mad Max Fury Road back to back. That was fucking awesome.
We did those back to back. Those were baller episodes.
Yeah, those are two of my favorite things that we talked about.
Oh, those were great. Wow, it really seems like everything just it happened so quick, even though it really didn't. We had we covered all of HBO's Watchmen. Yeah.
Lovecraft Country.
I wouldn't have watched a lot of the stuff that I did for the Rest in Power Chadwick Boseman episode if we didn't do one.
Hey, that's a good point. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of stuff that we kind of jumped into. That
I'm glad I did, but 42 and Get On Up, I hadn't seen those, but I'm definitely glad we did them.
What was your least favorite episode?
Oh,
or episodes?
Let's see. To edit, to record, or something
one of each.
I didn't want to watch. Okay, one of each. Least favorite to edit was probably the Halloween episode.
Knew it.
And while it, the subject matter was great, it's just there were a lot of technical issues that that let us know and learn for the future.
Right.
Least favorite. I don't think I liked Yellowstone either. Even though I liked the show, it, I could tell as we were doing it, this was something I was like, dude, here, fucking watch 3 seasons worth of shit and this specific episode, and these are out of context, and it puts you in a position to be like, yeah, they really did say that indigenous women are getting kidnapped. They said that. I don't know much about this character, but all right.
It's very true. Watching random scenes, I'm like, that was a cool scene. I don't know who these people are, but it was a good scene.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. There's some stuff I watched begrudgingly. Antebellum, I didn't want to watch a second time. even though I had good things to say about it, Idiocracy was so fucking rough. But it did give me a lot of preparation for the episode, because I was like, let's go into this. This is the first thing that I ever reviewed that like I had like negative feelings towards. So
yeah, I mean, I don't actually hate Batman Returns, for the record. I didn't love it. All right, I'll say that.
You said what
much,
you said.
Right? But Idiocracy, I can say without a doubt, I hated that fucking movie. So if you're a lover of Idiocracy and you're listening, I'm sorry. I hated the film. Maybe if I had seen it when it came out, I would have enjoyed it more. But watching it in 2020, not a good time for me. So
yeah, it's got to be just one of those things that doesn't hold up.
Yeah.
And by the way, we reviewed that in 2021. We reviewed it this year.
Oh, it felt like 2020. All right.
I know you didn't ask this, but Even the Rain, También la lluvia, I never would have watched, and I'm so glad I did.
Nice.
Pocahontas, I probably wouldn't have watched. Smoke Signals,
Really?
I never would have watched, but I'm glad I did. Yeah, I mean...
I'm surprised your wife wouldn't have had you watch Pocahontas.
I mean, she watched it at one point while I was around, but I didn't pay attention to it, and we had a much larger apartment at the time. Man, is there anything I didn't really want to review? I mean... I don't know, yeah, there were just some episodes that, like, I was just, like, either because of personal things or whatever, but, like, I went in very excited for, like, Spider-Verse, Soul, Judas and the Black Messiah. Basically any episode that has more than one guest on ends up being something that I don't want to do. But man, is there anything you're looking forward to reviewing in the future, or something that you'd like to try and fit in on the podcast?
I would like to talk about Invincible. I'm really enjoying that series, and I think it's a great adaptation of a comic book. And I kind of think Robert Kirkman's, he's an interesting person, and his, I guess, his arc as a person has been interesting, from being very, of a white straight male mindset writing to kind of...
He started The Walking Dead in Georgia and had mostly white characters.
Yeah.
And
there was a black character in the first issue. I'll give him that.
There was a black character. Yeah, there was.
But then that was it for a while.
Well, I mean, I definitely will do an Invincible episode and we'll talk about it then. But yeah, to see, like you said, his arc as a creator, a person, and how it goes into his work as well, was just it's been awesome. And I think it's really helped us with our own creativity, however much or little there may be at any given time, and just the way that we look at our own stories and our own characters. And we always see that there's they're ham-fisting politics into comics and stuff like that, but a lot of the ways that Kirkman discusses the things he discusses in his books are just so well done that you see it as part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I would say without a doubt, he's probably the biggest inspiration for me as a writer. I mean, I watched a few episodes of Invincible. What I do, I wrote a new issue of our comic, right? Like I hadn't written anything in a while, and I fucking watched that show, and I was like, I gotta write this, and I stayed up till 2 a.m, even though I've been working at 4 a.m. And I wrote it one night, and then finished the next morning and sent it to you. And like that kind of inspiration hasn't really hit me in a long time, and it is thanks to him. So I've really enjoyed that, and also just the way I felt about the Walking Dead TV series. Made me a little apprehensive for Invincible, and to not be disappointed, I think, is a really nice feeling.
Yeah, it's good to it's good to get justice.
Yeah,
but yeah. So I would definitely be down for an Invincible episode. We're gonna have to do a month where we don't theme things. Actually, we didn't really theme anything this month. We did it for specific weeks.
Yeah. And I think I'm looking forward to Batman stuff. Spoiler: there might be some Batman reviews on the way.
That's right. The month of May.
Yeah.
Batman month for us.
Batman month. So I'm definitely excited for that. Love talking about Batman. How about you?
Also, I never would have seen One Night in Miami. And if
I'd
never seen One Night in Miami, I never would have seen Malcolm X.
Interesting.
I don't know, I still haven't seen When They See Us. I still haven't seen Trial of the Chicago 7. Although I heard that's very
liberal.
That's like liberal porn. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to see because I heard it's well done, but I definitely heard they took some liberties to to make your liberal friends happy. So
Yeah. Man, what would I like to review? I unfortunately I'm going like big scope here. Like I would love to review the Dark Knight trilogy as a whole. I would
yeah,
love to review we can actually go back to Lord of the Rings and talk about the other themes that, just not the positive representations of masculinity. I would love to talk Game of Thrones at one point because, there's a whole climate change allegory. There's a lot to be said about, the misogynist undertones and rape culture.
right, and how they disappoint billions of fans.
I really didn't want to get serious about it, but I'm not sure, like, because I just watched the New Mutants and the Snyder Cut. Maybe we just do like a mental health episode and bring in a few different things, because I don't want to spend an entire episode on the New Mutants, and I don't want to spend an entire episode on the Snyder Cut. But I would like to talk about like the 6 things between the two of them that I really thought were relevant and deep.
Yeah, I that could be cool. And I'm adding one more. The Leftovers, because it's my all-time favorite series.
Yes.
I know you haven't watched it yet, but it's it left me with emotions that few other shows have left me with. So I would love to talk about it.
One of my, and I've told you about this, one of my dreams for the podcast is either to transition it into more of an entertainment style podcast, or just to have a completely separate one where we do improv, because I don't know about you, but just for me, this has been, while it is an educational process both for ourselves and for our listeners, it has also been a very exhausting process. It
Definitely.
is difficult to constantly look at these at these themes and learn about the faults of our world and our history and everything. And like you said, you didn't say this word exactly, but just the nihilism that sets in, it is rough, and it is very emotionally heavy to bear. But I do love getting the reviews. I do love seeing people who are actually interacting, and maybe we can keep doing the mini reviews, because the mini reviews for The Falcon and the Winter Soldier have been like a really nice sorbet for me. In between like the heavier themes of the podcast, Punk Rock Jesus was a heavy one, and while it was awesome, it was still a heavy one. And Soul was great, but it was also very existential, and
And it's also, finding the time to actually read and watch these things. It can be difficult. And I know people probably think, well, you can't take 2 or 3 hours to do this. But, me personally, like, I'm working full time. And, when you're home, you have, your animals and your family, and, you're balancing all these things and trying to make time for it. And then you also have to record for 2-3 hours, and then you have to edit, right? So it's, it's a big commitment. And I definitely agree. I think that at some point we might transition to something a little different. But in the meantime, I'm looking forward to reviewing some more stuff until we get to the point where we decide to do that.
Yeah, I want to hit at least 100 episodes before,
definitely,
we start thinking about hanging up the mic.
Yeah, we'll tell people we're going to go for 300 like Kirkman did, and then end like at some random fucking number.
There you go. And, maybe at that point we do we do a housekeeping episode every month, and we do a pop culture review every month. Something like that.
Right.
And, that also, I think, gives us time to gather better sources and, be a little bit more educational or academic, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
When we do have our our reviews. Have you listened to any episodes that you weren't on? And if so, what were your favorites? You can be honest.
No.
That's fair. Well, I mean, you still don't know.
Oh, actually, that's not true. That's not true. I did listen to one. I listened to your election discussion with Joe Armstrong.
Oh, God.
I did listen to that one.
That was a terrible episode to edit because I was not here for it. And I was like, man, this is how I really sounded, and he's like, yeah, well, Obama's cages were better. And I'm just like, all right, man, if that's what you fucking think, why not? We're all entitled to our thing. To go back to it, the Purge series was really great to review because I went off the I went.
You went all in. You went all in, man.
I went all in, and
you went straight QAnon on that bitch. You
all
just
of the purge. Yeah, I I purged myself. Nope. But yeah, so I went to I watched the purge. I watched all of them and got to see, like, it was good to go back to horror movies and see different themes to them than just it's killing and scariness and jump scares and stuff.
I mean, it was funny just that whole like way it came about, because I remember watching either the first or second purge with you while you were like dog sitting somewhere years and years ago, and I think it was the second one, and I really liked it. And then I liked election year, and I brought it up to you, and I was like, I really think we should do this. Like, there's an election coming up. Like, we got to do this movie. And you were like, yeah, let's do it. And then you just fucking got into it, and you were like, dude, I just watched all the Purge movies, and you were like telling me about. I didn't even see like the first Purge. Not the original Purge, the movie called The First Purge. And you were telling me all about it, and I was like, well, and you're like, there's a TV show, and you were just like really into it. And it was just fun for me, because you were kind of like educating me on the series and stuff that I didn't even know about.
The Dawn of the Dead one was really great too, because we got to talk about that.
Yeah.
That was a long time coming.
Yeah, we got this, man. We got it by the ass. So
we got it by the ass, man.
Yeah.
And one I think final question for you, Ty, before we decide whether or not you'll be continuing with us for another year.
Spoilers.
What does our theme song sound like to you? What do you think it sounds like?
Man, I was waiting for this question earlier, and then it didn't come, and I wasn't expecting it now.
You goddamn right. That's how I get you with it.
I think it's an orchestral masterpiece that's just it's like Halo or even like those sad moments in Star Wars. Like, it just hits. It's like something from Interstellar. It's like it gets all those emotional vibes. It makes you want to restart the sun. It makes you
okay, good. All right, and then you in the background you hear, "Do not go gentle into that good podcast."
Yes.
Do not do it. This podcast is made to rage to the close of day.
So I am exposed. I still have not heard the theme song, but I will. One day. I'm going to blow your mind and blow our listeners' minds when I know what the theme song sounds like.
We will see. I'm ready for it. But yeah, I'm definitely ready to record more episodes with you. I very much enjoyed taking more of a turn to just doing the episode for us and making it as best we can, and kind of social media happens. It happens. That's great. But But it's just it's been great to see more listeners. It's been great to release the mini reviews, and this podcast at this time next year, it will not be the same podcast at all. But I'm very just like this time last year, it wasn't the same podcast at all. So I'm very excited to see where it goes from here, how it evolves,
exactly,
and where we go from here. Are you Tyler? Not last name, not middle name, in any particular order. Will you continue being my co-host for the Politipop podcast?
You have my sword. I just want to close out with saying I've really enjoyed being on it, and when you asked me to keep doing it with you, I was really excited and kind of honored. I really thought it was going to be a three episode thing, and you were either going to not do it again or continue doing it with different guests. And when you asked me to stay on, I was really excited. And you've, besides the Joe Armstrong one, you've pretty much have always told me, even if I'm busy, you're like, I'm not doing it without you. Like, we'll make it work, Even when we had other guests involved, you were like, no, you have to be on it. I'm not doing it without you. And that's always made me feel really good. And like I said, I've really enjoyed doing it. I've learned a lot, while recording this and researching. And I think when I went into it, I was already on that path of, educating myself. And I've mentioned it multiple times, my girlfriend has taught me a lot in the years I've been with her, and I'm a very different person because of her. But I think I've evolved even more on this podcast. I went into it understanding things like white privilege, but left understanding my own, racism, right? Like, understanding that it's in and all white people.
And my own shit exposed to myself that I'm like, oh wow, did I just say that, or did I just think that?
Right.
Or,
Yep.
I guess we can all learn something.
Exactly. And I think that's been really, really helpful for me because it's made me more comfortable with the subjects. It's made me more comfortable with myself. And I feel like, I could have, I have actually had some really honest and educational conversations with people who didn't understand these concepts, and I've been able to do it in a clear and concise way where I don't think I could have before. So I'm really grateful for for all I've learned and all I've been able to discuss with you, and really delving into socialism and equality for all people, because I really do believe in all that. And I think the things we say in this podcast are very authentic, and hopefully people listening aren't like, oh, they're just doing it, because they're on mic. But I think we really both feel the way we do today, and we speak about these things and want to talk about them and continue to learn and get better. I'm not where I need to be, right? Every day I have to make conscious decisions to do better and to think differently. But I hope, in a year from now, I've done even more, and I've accomplished more, of my own development. And this podcast has been instrumental in that. So I want to thank you for letting me be on it with you, and for anyone who's listened. And I look forward to discussing more stuff and really learning.
Well, it's been our pleasure. And by our, I mean myself as the co-host and creator of the podcast, and
right.
Just your fucking brother. Like when when my wife doesn't want to hear my shit while I'm going off on these rants that she agrees with, but it's just like, all right, I gotta, she's a lot better at disconnecting than I am. You and I can go like, what the hell is going on the podcast together, and that's been great. And I think I've also enjoyed just kind of having a foil for it, because I think there's times where you may not be super well versed on a subject, so I can pick it up, and times when I may be underprepared for something and you can pick it up.
Definitely.
And, I love the idea that we don't claim to be professionals on anything, and we always provide our show notes and sources, and we're always open to critique. And, to an extent, I'm sure that hurts the listener base. People don't want to listen to people who don't seem sure of themselves, but also I hope it helps the listeners, because this could literally be you. You could be the person making a podcast, or choosing to use your art or music or whatever it is to explain yourself, to express yourself. The difference between us and you is that we're just doing it. Like the person who's like, oh, I've always wanted to start a podcast, or I've always wanted to do this. We're those people, but for other hobbies, for other professions. We've always wanted to do this, and we just haven't. So like,
and I think we introduce things, and like you said, we're not experts on it, but hopefully by introducing it to the listener, they can do more research, they can learn more about it, maybe they'll become an expert on it. I don't know, but we're just presenting the ideas there, for them to kind of explore. And like you said, it's just fun to talk with you. Even if there were 0 people listening, I look forward every week to having a discussion with you, and being able to really delve into this stuff.
And it's helped me quite a bit getting myself into that same mindset that I'm just just happy to do it. But remember, just like when we think of Fred Hampton, right? You don't want to be following a messiah necessarily. Like, you want to be able to be that person who can take over if that person is gone or whatever. So like, there's a leader in all of us, is what I'm trying to say. There's a voice in all of us, and hope whether you're new or you're an older listener, thank you for listening to our voice, and hopefully you've been able to find your own in the process.
If you're listening, you are the resistance.
You very much are. And if you're not, listen to a few more episodes and you will be. I swear. Like, don't turn away. What do we say we were reviewing next week, Ty? We were going to be doing a housekeeping, and then we were going to be finishing up The Falcon and the Winter Soldier on the 30th, right?
That's right.
All right. So next week, everybody, we have a housekeeping. We're going to be following up on violence against AAPI individuals. We're going to be talking about Dante Wright. We're going to be talking about the Derek Chauvin trial, and so much more. And of course, we gotta find at least one reason to shit on Biden, because
fuck Biden.
Yeah, fuck Biden. Thank God he chose a gay man to lead immigration enforcement. Literally, that happened. I'm not making that
Yeah.
But we'll delve into it a lot more next week. For those of you who are still here, remember, you can rate and review us, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube, where I used to put outtakes and never put any exclusive material. You can find us on Twitter at Politipop Pod, Instagram at Politipop Podcast. You could email us, as always, to let us know your thoughts or provide counterpoints, or just outright agree with us or throw us some ad money. At politipopcast@gmail.com. All of our show notes and sources are at politipoppodcast.wordpress.com. I can't guarantee they will be around for this episode, but maybe we'll throw them into our housekeeping. And as always, a special thanks to all of you, the listeners out there, to Antonia Chava for logo design, and to my renewed co-host, who was just a guest for this episode, to you as well for the Politipop podcast. I have been Mike Booch.
I have been Ty.
And remember, no matter what you're watching, no matter what you're reading, no matter what you're thinking, no matter what you're listening to, please never stop thinking, never stop learning, and always remember to read between the lines.
And scene.
By the way, we should have just thrown credits up right there. Boom, boom. Politipop podcast done for the week. That was great.